Hi, Anjali.
Hello, Jivana.
Hi, how are you? Let's see, I think we're live, but let's just check. Sometimes it just takes a few seconds. I think we're a little bit early, actually,
Really?
which is good. It's better to be early than late. That's what I always say. Let's see, it says going live right now. Let me see. If anyone's there, they can comment and let me know if they can hear us okay.
I can ask my husband.
No, I see it. There we are. Okay, and I hear us. All right, great, perfect. So hi, Anjali again. Thanks. I think we're live. I know we're live. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for offering this amazing platform, Jivana. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. I wonder if you could just introduce yourself a little.
Sure.
Yeah, and then, okay, that'd be great. I'd love to hear a little more about you.
Sure. I am Anjali. Anjali Rao is my full name. And I right now live in California, Bay Area, California, for the past 20 years. Born in India, Mumbai, actually, and then moved to Bangalore as a child. I consider myself Bangalorean and a Californian, so many labels. But grew up in Bangalore, which is the south of India. I'm not sure whether you are familiar with that part of India. And then came to the US as a student and been here working. I was diagnosed. I will just bring a few like highlights, the turning points, the catalyst as well. And one of that would be, other than the birth of my children, marrying my husband, and all the good stuff, was a very early diagnosis with breast cancer at age 37. And that, I think, was one of my pivotal turning moments. Looking back, totally upended my life entirely, completely unexpected. So because of the young age and stuff, I went through a bilateral mastectomy and reconstruction and, all the treatment. And then I've never practiced yoga ever back in India. I was always an Indian classical dancer. I always thought it was boring and it's for the old, not for me. But then I discovered that I couldn't open a jar of tomato sauce one day when I was cooking. And then I was like, what's that? So I went into my first research and went into my first yoga class. And I was like, whoa, this is yoga. So what is this happening? And, I got this sort of a very big epiphany, the magic. It happened then. And I was like, it gave me such a deep connection to basically my body at that time, because I had sort of divorced myself from what was happening, the trauma. And I didn't know that it was called trauma because I just jumped right in. I was a young mother and I was like, it's all over. I'm just going to go and do my thing now, And now I know that what was happening was that I was avoiding the trauma that had happened. So anyway, long story short, when I first went into the class, I told my teacher, I want to teach this. This is amazing. I want to teach this for people who are different. My teacher was like, why don't you come to your second yoga class? So that was my aha moment for my yoga experience. It was totally through asana, which is predominantly what happens for many here in the US especially. And I think that sort of gave me a doorway, a window into something deeper. And I was always a very curious child, sometimes too curious. Back in India, not very, sometimes not very popular because of my curiosity and questioning. So I said, what is this that is happening? And I'm feeling calmer, I'm feeling better. And that's got me started into teacher training and learning about the mind. So then I realized that a lot of the yoga is actually about the mind, and the body is just a sort of a conduit toward that. And now I teach yoga with that sort of background, and I'm now getting more into philosophy and history, because I think we cannot divorce where the context that this whole body of work and tradition and lineage is coming from.
Yeah.
So the emphasis of my study, and I consider myself a lifelong student, is about offering yoga philosophy even from a political, social, cultural context. So yeah, that's and now I teach yoga for people with cancer. I teach yoga philosophy from a feminist perspective, because a lot of the voices that we constantly study here in the US and even in India and all over the world is very patriarchal. So I'm trying to sort of understand where are the other voices which we haven't really heard. When Patanjali wrote his sutras, what was happening to the other people around?
Yeah.
And so who are his intended audiences? So that has always caused me great distress that we don't have women voices here. So that's my study right now. I'm studying it, and it's really tough to get these sources of information, because we are buried in patriarchy in yoga especially. So that's my passion, to really understand philosophy and the practice of yoga from the whole perspective.
That's so exciting. Yeah, I would like to talk more about that. But I was wondering if we could start with a centering. I had asked you earlier, maybe if you could do something. Would you mind?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Since today we are talking about the collective and the interconnectedness of us all, I thought it would be good to start with a practice that brings us in a space of feeling interconnected, first within ourselves, different parts of ourselves, and then maybe perhaps with each other. So if we could all take a seat in a position that is comfortable, dropping the shoulders, and maybe blink the eyes softly so that they are closed gently. And notice the breath. Notice how the inhale feels in the body, and how the exhale is. Can we gently, without any force, elongate the exhale? And as you do that, please soften the face and the lower jaw. The back of the neck. Bring your awareness to the points of contact of the feet on the earth. In the Indian tradition, the earth is not just, or even the Buddhist tradition, the earth is not a physical entity alone. The earth is viewed as a deity, a primordial goddess, Bhudevi or Prithvi. And the earth, Mother Earth, as we say, or in the Greek tradition, she's known as the Gaia. She holds us. So direct the awareness to where this feels the most supported for you in your body. As you exhale, you soften gently, rooting down. As you inhale, be aware of the space, part of the space that is entering your own body. And it's moving through you. And the mantra that I will share is about this feeling, this expression that is from one of the great statements from the Upanishads. And we will talk more about that later on. But I want to introduce you to this right now. And that is Tat Tvam Asi. That thou art. Right now, what is in your heart? We feel, we think, but we are more than that. So take your awareness to your heart center, the space around the heart center. What is in that? How does that feel right now? And it may not be something that you can label right away, but you just lean into that sensation perhaps. Let's take 2 more breaths. And then slowly keeping the eyes closed first. Blink the eyes gently, even as they are closed. And then open the eyes, look down first. And then trace a line right up.
Great, thank you. That was beautiful. So I was just thinking about how I first heard of you, actually. I remember reading an article you wrote about the history of women in yoga, I think. Yeah. And then now, as you're talking about, when you introduced yourself and you mentioned yoga for cancer and looking at the history of philosophy from a feminist perspective, I feel like we have so many topics that we could talk about. I mean, I'm an avid student of yoga philosophy. We just had a class this morning on the Accessible Yoga Ambassadors group. And I'm really interested. I mean, my focus is on accessibility. So I'm always looking at it. It's a political perspective, but it's always looking at how can we make these teachings available,
yes,
and understandable and applicable,
yes,
in our life. But I know we had picked a different topic for today. I mean, it's all related.
Yes, but then I think they're also interconnected, Jivana. That the topic that we're going to talk about now is how self-care is so commodified and how it is right now. What do we define as self-care? Where are we getting these concepts of self-care from? And it is coming from, in my opinion at least, that it's coming from a very patriarchal, capitalistic perspective. You're being fed all these notions of how it is to take care of yourself. Oh, you buy this, you go here, you do this. And and I'm not negating that. I think there is a place for that too in some part of your life needs maybe that stuff. but it's not only that. So, the patriarchy and the capitalistic perspective of philosophy, and it's also interconnected. So you cannot divorce one thing from the other. But for the purpose of time, how is self-care defined now, and how are we connected to the greater collective, and what the ancients tell us? That was what we are going to be talking about. And I read somewhere that, I'm not wise enough to make this up, but I read somewhere that there was we in wellness and I in illness. And that struck me deeply, because I think there is so much of truth in that. I think this whole, system that we've got going on in terms of access to healthcare, or who gets treated right now, who gets tested right now. I mean, the pandemic has sort of taken it all to a whole another level. Yeah. But it's revealing of so much of the political and economic inequities and access right now in our systems all over the world, in most parts of the world. So to me, I think that it's completely interlinked, and we sort of forget what the ancients have told us, and repeatedly have extolled the virtues of the greater collective, the greater good. If you were to go back, and I was looking at how am I going to parse this information, because it is so big. And I always go to like a couple things which kind of make sense to me the most, and that's what I wanted to kind of share. And the first one is, from the beautiful and lyrical Upanishads. And the Upanishads, if you may know already, it's the Shruti, the wisdom part of the Vedas. The Vedas had two parts, Jnana Kanda and Karma Kanda. Karma Kanda is all about the action and the rituals and stuff. The Jnana Kanda is what the big part of the Upanishads are. So Upanishads are so much, so I'm not going to go into all that. But what I really wanted to kind of bring into focus today are what we call as Mahavakyas. I'm not sure whether you have heard of that. Yeah. So Mahavakyas are these great statements, right? And one of them was the Tattvamasi. So if we were to look, the Upanishads say, the wise people say, that if we are a part of the greater collective. We are infused with the same spirit, the Brahman, which is immortal, which we cannot define, because by our very act of definition, we are limiting it to mere perception. So it's the same matter that, and energy and vibration that sort of reverberates in all of creation. However, I don't want to sort of bypass all the shit that's happened in the past few centuries, and actually since industrialization and even before, because the systems that were put in place that created great inequity. Yeah. So there is this expounding of oneness, which the Upanishads say, that we are all created similarly with the same material elements, but yet we are different. We are different in the way our life paths have traversed. We are different in terms of what we get access to really easily and what we don't. We are different in karma says where we are born. So there is both, and it's complex. But we should just kind of keep going back to if we continue to going back to what the collectivistic cultures have sort of practiced and manifested in so many ways, imperfectly. I don't think there is a perfect union of any kind in any living system that I know of. What can we learn, and how can we transform this sort of patriarchal capitalistic paradigm of self-care and connect it to the greater good? Because how can we be radical in our reimagining of what the collective care looks like? I think this is a good time to start thinking about those things and figuring out how we can act in our lives.
I love that. I actually, in my book, Accessible Yoga, the first section's on yoga philosophy, and that's basically, I talk about yoga and human rights. And I bring up that exact point, that there's a paradox there, which is often the truth, is often a paradox, which is that there's this truth that we're all equal, right? That in spirit, but not in reality. The day-to-day life, of our lives in this world, on this plane, are vastly different. And that's where human rights and disability rights in particular that I talk about really merges with yoga, and understanding that we all have the same fundamental rights in the sense that we all have this, like yoga teaches us, we all are fundamentally in our core, in our heart, maybe the same, but completely different, and have completely different life experiences at the same time. And we need to be able to hold both of those two opposite or opposing ideas together.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we find true equality, actually, is by embracing the difference.
Yeah. And we have to first acknowledge that there is a difference. I mean, by completely saying that, that we are all one, we are not negating that we are all different too. It's like you said, we are holding both of that here. So the thing that I also kind of draw from is the concept of what we call, which I think is one of the essences of from the Bhagavad Gita, which talks about nishkama karma, which means desireless action. We've got to, as a human race, to not only think about the expectations of our, what we get from doing something, but we really have to kind of practice, and it's not easy. It's not at all easy, but in smaller ways can we start taking baby steps first.
Yeah, karma yoga, right? I mean, that's
karma yoga. It is the yoga of action, and that I think sort of drives, and if that can be the undercurrent that drives the way we live and practice seva, service, our own kind. I mean, not all of us are equipped to do all of it, but we, in our own way, we can start creating ripples in our own communities, knowing that the change that I'm making is making a difference not only to that person's or whatever life, but in turn that is again connected into the way I feel about myself.
But wouldn't you say, even more subtle level, that the karma yoga is more just like the state of mind that we use in every action? So it doesn't even have to be in the service, like in doing something for someone else. It's just the way you do simple actions in your life. Yeah.
Any action. Karma yoga is about any action. It's not necessarily seva. But when it comes to collective care, I'm thinking, oh, that's my dog.
My dogs are going to start barking now.
Yeah. So I think there was a mailman or something. Yeah. So I think that's what what we can do is really, for me, the way I make yoga philosophy accessible is to see how I can apply these concepts. How can I apply these concepts not only as an individual, but when I move in the world, how can I do this? And I think the esoteric nature of yoga philosophy makes it feel like it's too big and complex, and it is. I'm not trying to make it, reduce it to a very, very simplistic level, but I think there is value here to kind of continue to question and always, go back to svadhyaya, reflection on why am I doing what I'm doing? How am I causing harm to another by doing something, by buying something?
But I want to go back to something you started speaking before your dog was barking. You started to say the difference between karma yoga as a state of mind versus seva, service. I just wondered if you could talk about that, because I sometimes tell, I have students who have maybe pretty severe disabilities, and they say, like, I had someone ask me once, like, how can I be of service when my whole life is basically spent taking care of my body?
Yeah.
And that's where I come back to the concept of self-care. And I say, actually, in my mind, self-care is that karma yoga. It's service to your body, which is what we all need to be doing anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think it's separate at all. I mean, only when I'm feeling that I'm supported and empowered, and I know that's a really like overused word sometimes, but only when I feel that full, then only can I give. And just by taking care, it's not just by taking care of your body. Taking care of your body is a big part of our lives. So the way we move in the world has, I think, if it comes from your own centered, authentic place, that is true service.
Yeah. I think it's an important message, because I feel like we get lost in I don't know what it is. Maybe it's part of patriarchy too, which is the kind of how much you do, like being almost like judging yourself on how productive you are. How productive can you be in your service becomes another kind of self-judgment that is not what karma yoga is about.
No, and I think, I'm guilty of that a lot. I just I think these are all the things that we have to kind of keep checking ourselves completely, and it's a life's work. It'll take a lifetime for us all to learn and understand and really internalize and practice. And maybe for, if you were to believe in reincarnation, many, many, many lives. Yeah. So I completely agree with you. I think that this will take a long time for us to kind of keep checking back and say, am I coming from a place of ahamkara? Am I coming from a place of, ooh, I'm going to do this, and ooh, look at me when I do this, and I see that too happening, and I check myself too when I do that too, because it's easy to do that in so many ways. It's a shortcut to feeling good. My first reaction has always been, ooh, how can I go help someone? Why am I asking? Why am I doing that? It's a constant process. It's a constant loop that you're playing in your own mind. And I think that's where the practice of yoga and a quieter reflective practice comes in.
I mean, this is my favorite topic. I mean, literally, this is what I'm trying to write my book about right now, my second book.
That's great. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, what?
Can you tell me more about that?
It's like I'm trying to find the words to express what you just said very clearly. Maybe you should write it. Basically, like trying to explain that to me, the way we live yoga is through service. But it's not about how much you can produce or how much good you do, but actually how you can cultivate a state of mind that it's kind of like and also a state of mind that is reflective and what do we call it? Discriminative discernment, in the Viveka. So I talk about Viveka, and I feel like it's an underexplained, under-taught concept from the yoga teachings that is really essential, I believe, at least in Patanjali Sutras. Yes. That Viveka is what we're trying to do. It's like sometimes I think we look at the sutras and we think it's about like destroying the mind or something, and it's about actually get it to be a sharper tool to see clearly through the illusion, see the connection. And then when you act, it's with less harm. You do less harm, and it's less about what you'll get out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You actually stole my line about Viveka, because I was going to say that. Because I really think, and that again comes with practice too, and to kind of continuously forgive ourselves, because we are so set up in our conditioning to view ourselves as productive bodies, that I think this pandemic has sort of thrown us all into this whole tizzy. What are we going to do with all this time? And I think that itself is a revolutionary act to say, you know what, I'm not going to be productive for now. I'm just going to be. And it's hard for me. I mean, it's not an easy thing for me too, because we are all coming with our own sense, our own samskaras, Really, we're all conditioned with such deep inner dialogues, that it takes a lifetime.
Yeah, that's a big struggle for sure. But I think what I'm interested in is that I think the goals of yoga have been misconstrued. Do you know what I mean? I feel like in many different ways. Sometimes the goal is put out there like it's a very physical goal. Either it's physical health, or it's like this idealized like acrobatic ability through asana, maybe, or it's like some unattainable goal of enlightenment that seems very far away. And I just feel like it's not really getting, none of those to me get to these more attainable and useful and important tools about learning about ourselves, about healing our inner relationship. Like I think about a lot as a relationship between my mind and my heart.
Absolutely.
And that's healing the relationship inside of me.
Yeah.
Rather than anything that anyone else can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I agree. All I can say is that, I think it's like a sharpening tool. Our practices are like a sharpening tool, and then we shine, and sometimes it's not at all pretty. It's not a pretty practice. Everybody, and including myself, I'm so conditioned to make it look a certain way because I don't want to, but it's really not. And even the internal work, the things that we tell ourselves, the inner dialogues about what is self-care and why we should even do certain things in the collective, in the community. I think we have to constantly check ourselves. And I think one of the ways which has helped me to come to terms with the fact that I cannot change the world is, though I want to so badly, is to really think about what I can do to the best of my ability to make an impact immediately. So look around our communities, like right around us, our neighborhood. And also focus on the kind of people who are doing good things. Because sometimes when you look around the world right now, it's a pretty tough place to be. Yeah.
That reminds me of what Mr. Rogers said,
Yes.
Like, look for the helpers or something if you're ever in a traumatic situation.
Yeah, and that has really helped. On the good days, it has helped to keep my sanity. The bad days, I've rallied. But I've seen, just so many grassroots level acts of kindness and generosity around me. I've seen how people are helping other people who need, who are high risk and with medication. I mean, all the day-to-day things, right? And they don't know anything about. At least they're not coming from this whole big objective to do something big.
Yeah.
So my way of looking at it is, how can I help them and be a conduit?
So it's like you could just you can distill all the yoga teachings down to like be a nice person.
Yeah, be a nice, kind person. And isn't that also hard sometimes? Because it is. And I call myself a unicorn. But radical unicorn who wants to go do some bad shit sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't mean be a nice person like by being passive. I mean like be a compassionate, loving, kind person, meaning that like if you see some harm happening, go and address it. Like I think that's what I was getting from what you were saying, is like you can just look around you immediately within your own head or within your own family.
Yeah.
Can you heal the relationships there? What about your neighbors? Can you just do some act of kindness to take care of someone if they need support?
Yeah. And I think, we don't give enough credit for people who are allies, because the glamour is in the people who are doing in so many ways. They get all the credit. But can we be allies? We may not have all the answers. None of us do. I don't think, I completely don't believe that one person has all the answers. But can we be an ally to somebody else's truth? Can we help give space, allow for their truth to shine? I think that right now is the need of the hour. And in that way, also, we are practicing collective care. It doesn't have to be something really, out there. But we can start, and it's all the baby steps that will make a difference.
That's interesting. Within accessible yoga, over the last few years, I've really focused on connecting people who are doing similar work around the world. And something that kind of frustrates me is, and it's just a human tendency, I think, and maybe it's the ego of wanting to create something new. And and maybe I've done it myself, where I just want to start a new organization or a new group. Say you're interested in teaching yoga for cancer, you might start a whole yoga for cancer program. But to me, it feels like, why not just look at what other people are doing?
Absolutely.
And collaborate in some way, or just reach out. But even, it's frustrating, because then even if you do reach out, they may not be open, because they might have their egos stuck in there somehow too. Right. But it feels like for us, especially doing this kind of community grassroots type of work, it feels like the only way to be successful is to work together.
Yes. And to work with people who you have the most, you resonate the most, because this is life. I mean, sometimes you just will not resonate with people with their intentions and their objectives, and then that's where your viveka comes in, and then you have to kind of figure out how to direct your attention somewhere else. And it's something that you can do with your own experience and what you're capable of, what's your bandwidth. Because some of us just don't have the resources, and so that's why I kind of feel that if we do have certain resources, then in so many ways we have the privilege. It's an honor. We are not moving from a place of ego, but we are moving from a place of certain humility in what we can do. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, collaboration, I think, is a type of self-awareness. To collaborate with someone means you have a certain kind of ability to check your ego and to be open to them and their work too. So I really encourage our community to work on that more. And it's something I'm working on myself, is learning how to, because I like to be in control,
No, but I really think you're doing an amazing job with giving. From whatever I'm seeing, I think you're doing a great job on allowing so many different voices to be heard. I mean, you hardly know me, and you're giving me this platform, so that is credit to you. And I don't really often say things like this, but so I really do think so. And I think, like you said, one of the things that I work as a board member for people like HERS. It's called a HERS Breast Cancer Foundation, and we provide resources for people who are going through treatment for breast cancer. I mean, so that's something which is really close to my heart. So when we are trying to do seva, that's what our calling is, and it may not be. For many, it's really not. But if that is your calling, then we can really look into what really speaks to you, what gives you the most meaning and fulfillment. We cannot change the whole world, but there are certain things that will speak to you, and then that's what will drive you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, wouldn't you say that yoga practices allow you to even listen to your heart? Because like you just said, what speaks to your heart, first, you have to be able to listen to those messages. And there's so many competing messages in our lives. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to know which voice is which, which
and that's where the self-care comes in, I think.
What?
I said that's where the self-care comes in. That's where the centering practices matter. Otherwise, you're just going around like this person who's doing all kinds of things just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think they're completely interconnected and interdependent. I mean, it's not one leads to the other, but they're both interconnected. We encourage, we empower, we give space to, we help, but only if it's coming from your own center, from your own truth.
It's so interesting because I think once it's like we make a decision and then either I think it's personality. There's some people like will go for that thing no matter what, even if it ends up not being the right thing to pursue. They just keep after it. Other people give up like too soon maybe and just think, oh no, I'll just go on to the next thing. So it's always hard for me, especially, to find that balance. And I think it's like you said, it's like the way I find it is in my practice, actually.
Yeah.
By spending time doing my asana, meditation, pranayama, those things actually allow me to quiet my mind enough to hear my heart, rather than just all that talking. And then I do think it makes the service more effective.
Yeah.
And that's what I wanted to share in the book I'm writing, is like, I want to make it practical. So it's like practical tools for this work, which is to be of service in the world. I mean, I'm interested in social justice work, but I realize that I don't want to be lecturing people about that. I want them to learn how to use yoga to reveal their own truth and find their own way. And because that's what yoga is for. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just showing what you're teaching right now, I think, is that yoga and that self-care piece, if it's done, I think if it's done authentically, can then be directly related to actual care for the community and collective care. So it's like care for yourself and care for others. You can't really separate those two things.
Yeah, in my head, I can't. And I think it's been a learning, and I think we have to always, my teacher says that we always look at something with curiosity. Yeah. And if we're doing something, we kind of look at ourselves with curiosity, not judgment, but curiosity. Why did I do certain things? You got it. I think they're both completely interrelated, and self-care is not just all of, just taking care of the body, because that's where it's coming from now. Now it is self-care means you go take a bubble bath and then go for happy hour. I love bubble baths, but I'm just saying that's not it. So in the sutras, we have this one sutra called Heyam Dukkham Anagatam.
Yeah, there you go.
That's like for me one of the central tenets of my self-care.
Of course. That's right before where he introduces Viveka. That it's like he's saying, future suffering is avoidable.
Yeah.
And it's avoidable through this process that you're describing, which is through self-awareness.
Yeah.
That comes through your practice, which is self-care. So then he introduces Ashtanga Yoga and the 8 limbs and asana. That's all part of that. The way we do that, the way we avoid suffering, is actually by knowing ourselves better.
Yeah.
Taking care of ourselves. And that's why, actually, I feel like what's missing in there for me, like in the sutras, is this part about how it connects to the world and social justice. And I think we have to make that connection now, which I hear you making, rather than samadhi. Like, I feel like, he says then, the samadhi, but it's like.
So this is the thing though about Patanjali. And I love Patanjali very much deeply.
I'm excited for what you're about to say. Yeah.
But there is a big but there. So Patanjali wrote this, or espoused this for people who were brahmacharyas, the young Brahmin boys. They were boys, not the householders, and certainly not for the world that we are living in right now. So this is one of my pet peeves about using only the sutras without understanding the social and the cultural context surrounding the sutras. So so thank you for bringing that up.
No, thank you. I'm going to quote you. I'll quote you in my book. Because I just, I don't buy that level of samadhi. I think it's just this kind of like, I don't know, elevated spiritual thing that is maybe if you're a monk, fine, but I think it's not part of the reality that we're living in now. Yeah. And I think it distracts us from the other tools that are there and the other lessons within yoga,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm now studying this whole, like I mentioned about the women in yoga, and what I'm learning more is that even pre-Vedas, because the Vedas was a very, was a pretty patriarchal. It was not as patriarchal as the Brahminical times, but the Vedas were sort of patriarchal. We do have women composers of the Veda, but pre that was more matriarchal. More matrilineal, and it was more egalitarian. There was very little at that time, anthropologically, very few weapons of war, for example. It was a lot more about agriculture and how to live as a collective.
Right. Like it was like how to cook or how to make the fire, and
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. How do we survive together? Yeah. Together, because only in the togetherness was survival and living. So I think we've got to kind of we will not go back there. Obviously, we've gone far too away. But then, what can we learn from that?
Yeah, that's so exciting. Well, I know we weren't going to talk that long, but I could go a lot longer on this. But maybe could you tell us just about how people can find out more about your work or read more about what you've written?
Well, you could be on my Facebook. And I'm trying to write a little bit more, so I will be publishing a lot more. And then I have a website too, which I can share. And I hope to be more active on accessible yoga, so people can, because I really do think and I resonate very much with all the stuff that's happening there.
Yeah, actually, you were going to be presenting at our conference in Portland, but that's going to be moving online in October. So we're going to reach out to you soon.
Excellent.
We're trying to make a plan because it's really not as simple as it sounds to move an event online.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, I mean, also, I just want it to be effective because there's so much available online, and we don't need to just waste time. So it has to be something very useful for people. But I want to highlight voices like yours. So I hope you'll consider being part of that online conference that we'll have in October.
Oh, I would. It would be an honor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I love this so much. I mean, really, I'm just so excited about your work, and maybe, I mean, people can find you on Facebook. So we can put. Do you have a website?
I do have a website, and I'm on Instagram and. Right now, I'm just sort of studying. I'm in a nerd mode. So that's where I am, and I would, definitely, I'll share everything I'll share it with you, and then you can do whatever.
You can put a comment on this feed in the, for the video as well, if you don't mind. I know people on there would love to hear more about that and find out how to be in touch with you.
Sounds good.
So thank you. Do you have any other thoughts for us?
No, I'm first of all really happy that I could have this conversation with you. I know I told you that I'm a little nervous because I've never really been on such a big platform that you've given me. So I'm humbled by that, and I just hope that I continue to share and learn along with you.
Your work is so important, and I mean, it's just important to hear that perspective. I'm so grateful. Like it's really what I'm thinking these days. So it just means a lot to me, to learn from you and listen to you. So anyway, thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.